The people who thrive in retirement are people who didn't actually retire in the traditional sense. They stopped working at a job, but they didn't stop working. They had hobbies that engaged them deeply. They had social structures outside of work. They had purpose, whether that was volunteering, creating, mentoring, caring for grandchildren, or building something new. They had what the Japanese call ikigai, a reason for getting up in the morning. The Okinawan people of Japan, who were part of one of the world's blue zones with the highest concentration of centenarians on Earth, don't even have a word for retirement. The concept doesn't exist in their culture. They have ikigai, and they pursue it until they die. They're farming at 90. They're teaching at 100. They never stop contributing because their culture understands something that modern Western retirement culture has forgotten. Humans need purpose to survive. Let me connect this to the distinction that I think is the most important reframe in all of personal finance. There's a massive difference between retirement and financial independence, and conflating them might be literally shortening your life. Retirement, as it's traditionally conceived, is about stopping. It's about reaching an age or a number where you don't have to work anymore, and then you don't. The goal is leisure. The finish line is absence of obligation. Financial independence is something completely different. Financial independence is about having options. It's about reaching a point where you don't have to work for money, which means you can work on whatever you find meaningful without worrying about whether it pays. The goal isn't to stop working. The goal is to do work you would choose even if you weren't being paid, because you're no longer forced to do work you wouldn't choose. This distinction sounds subtle, but it's the difference between life and death, sometimes literally. Let me show you why this matters with some concrete numbers. Let's say you've hit your financial independence number. You have $1.5 million invested, generating about $60,000 per year at a 4% withdrawal rate, and your expenses are $50,000. You're free. You never have to work for money again. Under the traditional retirement model, you quit your job and fill your days with golf, television, and cruises. Under the financial independence model, you quit your job you didn't like and start doing something you do like. Maybe starting a business you always wanted to try. Maybe working part-time at something you find meaningful. Maybe volunteering extensively. Maybe creating art or writing or building things. In both cases, you're not working for money, but in the second case, you're still working. You still have structure, challenge, purpose, social connection, and cognitive engagement. The financial math is identical. The health outcomes are dramatically different. This is where it gets really interesting because we need to talk about what work actually provides beyond money and why removing it is so dangerous. Work provides at least 5 critical psychological and social functions that most people never consciously recognize until they're gone. The first is structure. Work gives your days, weeks, and years a rhythm. You know when to get up, what to do, how to sequence your time. When retirement removes this structure, people often drift into patterns that are actively harmful: irregular sleep, endless television, social isolation, neglected health. The freedom from structure that sounds so appealing in theory often becomes oppressive in practice. Research on unemployed populations consistently finds that even people who hated their jobs struggle with the loss of temporal structure, and retirees show similar patterns. The second function is identity. For better or worse, we derive a huge portion of our sense of self from what we do. When someone asks, "What do you do?" and you no longer have an answer, something in your sense of self becomes unmoored. A study from the Journal of Vocational Behavior found that career identity is one of the strongest predictors of adjustment to retirement, with people who had strongly job-identified selves struggling most after stopping work. This is why retirees often introduce themselves by what they used to do for years or decades after leaving work. The identity hole is hard to fill. The third function is social connection. For most adults, work is the primary source of social interaction outside of family. Your colleagues, your clients, your professional network, these relationships provide daily human contact that retirement eliminates overnight. A meta-analysis published in PLOS Medicine found that social isolation increases mortality risk by 26%, comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And retirees are at significantly elevated risk of social isolation, especially men, especially those who didn't cultivate social connections outside of work. The fourth function is purpose. Humans have a deep need to feel useful, to contribute, to matter. Work, even work we don't love, often provides this sense that we're doing something that helps others or creates value. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, argued that the primary drive in human beings isn't pleasure or even happiness, but meaning. When retirement removes the sense that we're contributing to something beyond ourselves, a kind of existential vacuum opens up. This is what the research on Ikigai captures.